So far this season, I've made a video talking about the most impressive player from all 31 teams. I've also made a video talking about the most overlooked player from all 31 teams so far. And since I've made those, I saw a lot of people in the comment section asking for the most disappointing players video, so that is exactly what we're going to do today. I'm going to take a look at the most disappointing player from all 31 NHL teams so far. And remember, it is still pretty early in the season, and most likely a lot of these guys will turn it around. And as always, if you guys are new and have been enjoying the content, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Starting off with the Anaheim Ducks, and my pick for them is Ondrej Kase. Now, Kase is a guy who played very well last season, even though he only played in 30 games due to injury. He had 11 goals and 9 assists for 20 points, and this was coming off a 20-goal season in where he only played 66 games. So heading into this year, I had some pretty high expectations for him and definitely thought he could be a 30-goal scorer, but so far this season, he only has 3 goals in his first 19 games, and albeit he does have 10 points in his playing relatively well, I kind of expected a little bit more from him in terms of the goal scoring, so that's why he's my pick for the Ducks. For the Arizona Coyotes, my pick is Phil Kessel. Now, I will say one thing that I forgot to mention at the start of the video. These are based off of my expectations that I had for these players heading into the season, so it definitely could be different for everybody. But now, getting back to Phil Kessel, so far this season, only 4 goals and 10 assists for 14 points in 25 games, and for a team that really struggled to score over the past few years, they need a little bit more from Phil Kessel, but luckily for the team, they've been playing very well this season, despite Kessel not fitting in perfectly just yet. But if Kessel can get going, that'll just make this team that much better. Moving on to the Boston Bruins, my pick for them is Jake DeBrusk, who last year had a breakout season with 27 goals in 68 games, and 100% would have been like a 30 to 35 goal scorer had he have stayed healthy. And heading into this season, I kind of expected him to take that jump and become a first-time 30 goal scorer. But so far in 18 games, only 4 goals and 4 assists for 8 points. He still has overall played a pretty decent game, but again, like Ondrej Kase, I expected a little bit more from DeBrusk in terms of goals. Next up, we have the Buffalo Sabres, and my pick for them is Casey Mittelstadt. Now, when him and Pettersson were both coming into their rookie season at the same time, I remember I thought 100% that the Calder Trophy race was going to be between those two guys. But Casey Mittelstadt was a little bit underwhelming in his rookie season with only 25 points in 77 games, and heading into this year, I really thought he was primed to have a breakout season. But so far in 24 games, Mittelstadt only has 3 goals and 4 assists for 7 points, so I definitely expected a little bit more from him offensively, but hopefully as he gets more comfortable, he can only get better as the season goes on. For the Calgary Flames, my pick is easily Johnny Gaudreau, who last year had an amazing breakout season with 99 points and was the best player on the first seed in the Western Conference. And so far this season, he has kind of been underwhelming with only 20 points in 27 games, and while those still are pretty good numbers, he has to be better if Calgary wants to turn their season around. And with the news that just came out about Bill Peters, things aren't really looking good for the Flames organization right now. Next up, we have the Carolina Hurricanes, and they're off to a great start to the season, so it was kind of hard to choose who's been disappointing, but I decided to go with Nino Niederreiter just because I had some pretty high expectations for him coming into the season. And the reason I had these high expectations is because after the trade last season that sent him from the Wild to the Canes, he was unreal. He played 36 games with Carolina and had 14 goals and 16 assists for 30 points. And in my opinion, 3 goals in 24 games for him so far this season is definitely a little bit low. Moving on now to the Blackhawks, I'm going to go Captain Serious Jonathan Toews on this one, and I will say he has definitely been a lot better of late, but still only 12 points in 23 games. I think they need a little bit more from him than that. And Jonathan Toews' game has never been to put up a ridiculous amount of points, but coming off last season where he had a career high 81 points in 82 games, I think that kind of rose my expectations for him heading into this season. Next up, we have the Avs, and they're off to a great start, so it's kind of difficult to choose for them, but I decided to go with their former top 10 pick in 2016, Tyson Jost. Now, heading into this season, I really thought they needed help in terms of depth scoring, and that he needed to step up in a big way and maybe become like a 45 to 50 point scorer. But with the additions of guys like Jonas Donskoy, Kadri, and Burakovsky, and they've all played super well, I feel like they've all passed over Tyson Jost in the depth chart. And so far this season, Jost only has 8 points in 20 games, and while he is still a solid player, maybe it'll take a trade to a new team for a fresh start for him to really realize his potential. Next up, we have the Blue Jackets, and I'm easily going to go with Josh Anderson for them, and I definitely thought with the departure of guys like Panarin, Duchesne, and Dzingel that he would play a bigger role in the offense this season. But in the 17 games that he played, he only had 1 goal and 1 assist for 2 points, and this was coming off a breakout season in which he had 27 goals, so I definitely expected a lot more from him. Next up, we have the Dallas Stars, and man, have they ever been on a tear lately, and for their most disappointing player, I'm going to go with John Klingberg, but now that he's back from injury and the entire team is starting to play very well, I think we're going to start to see John Klingberg look like last year's player. And I believe he picked up a couple assists in last game, so he's already starting to pick it up anyways. But for me, before his injury, I I noticed his slow start because he was on my fantasy team and I really expected a lot more from him, but I'm pretty confident that now that Dallas has turned it around, so has John Klingberg. Moving on to the Red Wings, and for them, I'm going to go with Andreas Athanasiou. I was going to go with Taro Hirose, but he's a rookie, so I don't want to put too much pressure on him, and I also could have went with Larkin here, but I feel like his overall game has been pretty good despite the lack of point production, so I'm going to give it to Athanasiou, because last year, a breakout season of 30 goals and 54 total points, and this year through 24 games, only 5 goals, albeit he has been a lot better of late. I feel like his overall game for the most part this season has kind of been trash, and he's a team worst minus 25, and even though plus minus is kind of an overrated stat, you never like to see that. Moving on to the Oilers, another team that has been very good to start the season, so it's kind of difficult to point out a disappointing player, but if I had to pick, I gotta go with Alex Chiasson, who last year had a career high 22 goals in 73 games, and so far this season through 22 games, he only has 2 goals. But luckily for him and the team, other guys have definitely picked up the scoring, and that is a big reason why the team has been so good to start the year, so Chiasson's struggles haven't really hurt them. Next up for the Panthers, I feel like there is only one right answer here, and it's gotta be Sergei Bobrovsky, but luckily for the Panthers, despite Bobrovsky's struggles to start the season, their offense has been so dynamite over the past couple of weeks that they've still been able to win a ton of hockey games and are still one of the best teams in the NHL, so if Bobrovsky can turn it around, look out because they're going to be dangerous. For the LA Kings, I'm going to go with Adrian Kempe. He came into the league and played 25 games in his first season and put up 6 points, and then the following year followed that up with 37 points, and after that I thought he was really going to be a future breakout star for the Kings. But then last year he faced a little bit of a setback as his points did take a pretty big hit as he only had 28 in 81 games, and so far this season only 3 goals and 6 assists for 9 points in 23 games. And while his points per game doesn't look too bad, I'm starting to think maybe this is just what Adrian Kempe is going to be, like a 45, maybe 50 point guy at best, but he still is very young, so I guess I'm kind of being hard on him here. For the Minnesota Wild, I'm going to go with Ryan Donato. Now, he looked like a great prospect for the Boston Bruins, but they decided to trade him away for a win-now player in Charlie Coyle, and at the time, it looked like Minnesota robbed Boston in the trade because Donato in 22 games with the Wild last year had 16 points. But so far this season, Donato has kind of struggled to find his way at the NHL level with the Wild, as in 22 games he only has 4 points and was a healthy scratch a couple of times. But again, he's still very young and has tons of time to grow. Moving on now, we have the Montreal Canadiens, and for them I'm going to go with sophomore Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Now this is one that I definitely wouldn't worry about because like a lot of other guys, he still is very young and this is only his second season in the NHL. I mean, the kid's still 19 years old. But after a solid rookie season of 34 points, I'm sure a lot of people expected him to have a pretty big jump in his sophomore season, but so far in 16 games, only 2 goals and 1 assist for 3 points. But like I said earlier, I wouldn't worry about this, and I feel like it's kind of just a classic case of the sophomore slump. Moving on now to the Nashville Predators, I'm going to go with Mikael Granlund, who they acquired at last year's trade deadline in exchange for Kevin Fiala. Now, Granlund really struggled to find his way after the trade, only 1 goal in 16 games for the Predators last season, and so far this season, he's not really doing much better with just 3 goals and 6 assists in 23 games. And I really thought heading into this season, Granlund would start to find his way in Nashville, but that hasn't been the case, and luckily for him, he is an up-and-coming unrestricted free agent, and maybe next year a fresh start with a new team and a bigger role can get him back on track. For the Devils, I'm going to go with PK Subban, but I feel like this one was to kind of be expected because it does take a while for new players to really get comfortable with their new team, and in Subban's case, I feel like New Jersey kind of wanted him to change his game a little bit and become a more defensively reliable player as opposed to the offensive powerhouse that we always knew him as. But with all that being said, Subban's start to the season definitely still has been disappointing, and the fact that the team as a whole is struggling too doesn't really make it any better. Next up we have the Islanders, and they've been so good it was really hard to make a choice here, but I went with Eberle for the sole fact that he hasn't scored a goal yet in 12 games, but he has been injured a lot, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt here, and when he gets fully healthy and slots back into his role with the Islanders, I'm sure he'll still be good for 15 to 20 goals this season. For the Rangers, I'm going to go with Jacob Trouba, but again, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because it does usually take a while for players to really get comfortable with their new team. But so far this season, I feel like he hasn't really been the player he was last year for the Jets, and the fact that he's making $8 million now with the Rangers makes the struggles a little bit worse. Moving on to the Senators, I don't really have anyone for them because as a team, they've definitely kind of been overachievers, and it's been super fun to watch them really prove a lot of people wrong, so I don't really think anyone on the team's been disappointing so far. But if you're a Sens fan, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Moving on to the Flyers, a very easy choice here. It's gotta be Shayne Gostisbehere, and he had a disappointing season last year as well, but it's just gotten even worse, and he was actually a healthy scratch last night, and I find that pretty crazy. I mean, just 2 years ago, he was a 65-point defenseman, and we're looking at him as a future Norris caliber player. But things since then have just been downhill, and I honestly feel like it's time to trade him somewhere else and give him a fresh start. Moving on to the Penguins, another kind of difficult one here because I feel like with all the injuries, they've been overachieving a little bit, so I'm gonna go with Alex Galchenyuk for the sheer fact that he only scored his first goal as a Penguin, I believe, in last night's game. And for a guy you traded Phil Kessel away to bring in, you definitely need a little bit more from him, and we know he can do it. I mean, he's scored 30 goals before. Next up, we have the Sharks, and I'm definitely gonna have to go with Martin Jones, and this is another team that definitely has turned it around of late, but Martin Jones's numbers basically over the past 2 years have not even been good enough to be like a starting caliber goaltender. Even though he got a really good record last year of 36, 19, and 5, he only had an .896 save percentage and a 2.94 goals against. And this year his record is 10, 8, and 1, and he has a 3.18 goals against and a .891 save percentage. He's got to be better for this team in the regular season. Next up, we have the St. Louis Blues, and like the Senators, I don't have anybody for them. They've had a really good start to the season, and looking over their roster, I can't really find anyone that's been disappointing. But Blues fans, you would definitely know better than I do, so make sure to let me know down in the comment section who you think it should be. Next up, we have the Lightning, and my pick for them is Tyler Johnson, and it's because he only has 4 goals in 21 games. He does have 10 points, which is okay, but 29 goals last year and only 4 so far through the first 21 games, I definitely thought at this point he'd have a little bit more. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm gonna go with Tyson Barrie, but obviously it's a different story now that Sheldon Keefe is the head coach, because the last 2 games have arguably been his best 2 games of the season, because it seems like he's just more comfortable out there, he's not afraid to make mistakes, and he can finally just play his game, and that's an offensive defenseman style game, and he couldn't really do that under Mike Babcock, so I had to give it to Barrie because I'm basing it off the entire season, but he's turning it around already. Moving on to the Canucks, this was another pretty difficult team to choose from because I feel like a lot of the guys are having a great season, but I'm gonna go with Micheal Ferland because in the 12 games that he has played, he only had 1 goal, and he has been injured, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt here, and hopefully when he comes back, he can turn it around and start to score a little bit more because they signed him for $3.5 million to be a checking forward who can chip an offense, and in his 12 games, he was kind of just the checking forward. Next up, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, and for them, I'm gonna go with Paul Statsny because last year he did only play in 50 games, but he was great. He had 42 points, and I had some high expectations for him coming into this season, mostly because I thought he would be centering the second line with Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty, but that hasn't been the case. Cody Glass started the year with them, and then Eakin was with them for a bit, and it's kind of just all been in shambles lately. And this season, in 26 games, Statsny only has 11 points, and he's making $6.5 million, so they need him to step it up a little bit. Next up, we have the Caps, and they've obviously been amazing to start the season, so I'm really digging deep for this one, and I'm gonna go with Richard Panik. They signed him this summer as an unrestricted free agent to a cap of $2.75 million, and after coming off of a 14-goal season with Arizona, I'm sure the Caps thought they could get at least 10 to 20 goals from him this season, but so far in 15 games, only 1 goal for 1 total point, so he hasn't been the greatest, and I guess you can call him disappointing. And now, finishing out the video with the Winnipeg Jets, I'm gonna go with Blake Wheeler, but like he hasn't been bad, and he is now 33 years old, so the decline in terms of his point production had to happen someday. And I had to go with Wheeler because I feel like everybody else on this team that actually had expectations heading into the season are doing pretty well. And so far in 24 games, Wheeler only has 14 points and is a -9, and this is coming off back-to-back 91-point seasons, so I guess that's why I have him as their disappointing player. So that's gonna wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section below if you disagree with any of my picks. Who would you choose for that team? And with all that being said, thank you guys so much for all the support lately. I really do appreciate it, and if you guys did enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in tomorrow's video.